Thank you everyone.
This one is active.
Thank you everyone. So hello and welcome to everybody on the panel. Today we are discussing a very important topic, AI data and personalization, the game changers in video marketing. So video marketing, as we all know, a very powerful medium which has the ability to combine motion, sound, visuals, the aspect of storytelling, and which really resonates with the audience base that everybody is reaching out to. Now, this could be a 6-second bumper ad, or this could be a 2-minute brand film for that matter. The idea is at times to kind of drive awareness, also to kind of drive consideration, and nudge that purchase also sometimes. Back in the day, when we were doing traditional video advertising, I think the concept of one-to-many was far more prevalent, wherein one creative, one messaging broadcasted to a larger audience space without any personalization whatsoever. Which brings me to my first question of the day to all the panelists here. What, according to you, is changing the fastest in AI data and video marketing? Do you think it's the creative itself, or do you think it's the measurement, the targeting, or the consumer's expectations from the brand? We can start with Ganapathy.
Good afternoon. I guess, just the last session before we break for lunch, is it? So let's try and keep it as exciting, and I'll speak less. I'll try to do, certainly. But to answer you, yes, all three of them are getting disrupted. With today, the technology input across all of these three variables in terms of targeting, in terms of consumer experience of the creative, and in terms of the way consumer expectation has evolved to that experience, all three of them got disrupted. You can target better, more purposive, and more result-oriented. You can build creatives which can get tested better because of the AI interface. And so depending on whether you want to take an entirely AI route or you want to take a hybrid route between testing on AI and then kind of bringing it together with the non-AI, and the entire ecosystem can help you. So that can help you increase efficiency there. And last but not the least, with all of this happening, the consumer expectation today has gone up. You want the consumer eventually, even if they're not saying it loud today, will eventually expect customization, personalization, not just customization, but personalization to that need which they have at that point in time. I think that is what, if we truly have to unlock the potential of all of this, we have to chase that. And as marketers, we have an additional responsibility of chasing that at profit. So I think that's the long discussion where this is set up to. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel that what's changing the fastest has always been the same thing that's been changing the fastest, Rekha, which is the consumer herself or himself, right? I don't think the consumer expects anything from a brand. Brands are expected to deliver something by themselves if they want business, if they want to generate profit. Consumer doesn't care about brands at all. Consumers are evolving dramatically, and for years and since eons, I think we've been trying to second guess what their evolution might be like and create our communication around that, our propositions around that. What AI and data is doing now is helping us play that catch-up game a little better, hopefully a lot more in real time. And therefore, I think on the net balance sheet of it, marketers are actually really, really better off because we are, for a change, fortunately not necessarily second guessing what the consumer might think, might believe, might hope, might want, might expect. We actually have data, behavioral data, to back up whatever we are hypothesizing about a consumer behavior. And I think that's where this is at the moment.
Thanks. I think I'd obviously say the same thing, but what is changing with everything, of course, is the consumer expectation, and especially in the fintech space, right? I think what we've seen in the last 10 odd years, when people used to do traditional banking and go to bank branches, etc. Now everything, I think people in this room would agree with me, I think very few of us are carrying our wallets, right? Everything is happening on your fingertips. Everything is happening so quickly. And in any space, the consumer expectation is that what is it that you will do differently for me, which nobody else will do? While we've got all these tools, AI, we are doing a lot of cohort-based learning, behavioral learning. Where are you on the curve? Are you a new customer? Do you understand banking? New to UPI? All of these bunch of cohorts. But what is really happening is that how are we differentiating in terms of solving the customer problem? With all of these tools, am I the brand which is going to be able to solve something? And when everybody in, the key thing which is really happening when we're, generating so many creatives, we have options, we have agencies, we have data, that everybody is looking alike. While we are chasing lookalike audiences, but what is the painful point is for the consumer, everything is looking the same. How is it that in this complexity, the consumer is expecting, hey, in these 10 or hundreds of apps which are speaking to me day in and day out, how am I going to be different? How am I going to be personalizing something which you want from me? I think that's where it is. We need to catch up with the customer. That's the expectation which is changing on a daily basis.
Obviously fundamentally agree with all three of you, right? If I kind of zoom out and basis whatever you mentioned, right, about expectation, the consumers changing themselves or across creatives, targeting, etc. I think also because as Shiprocket, right, we are at a vantage point where I see lakhs of these D2C businesses trying to communicate with their own customers and figuring out how is it that they can do it better. And we ourselves are also advertisers, right? Fundamentally, what has evolved, at least in the last 6 months, is this relationship between brand and customers. Customers these days don't want to be advertised to. What they're looking at is conversations. They're looking at, hey, boss, you know who I am, you know where I am, talk to me in the language that I want, figure out what is it that I need, and fulfill that need gap. It's not advertising anymore. It's essentially, advertising has evolved into a conversation where, and obviously, it boils down to expectation, it boils down to their own changing behavior because that's the kind of treatment that they're getting across the board. And we as brands will have to kind of get there. In fact, I'll call out what has not caught up and what is the thing which is changing the slowest, and that is measurement. That's because across creative, targeting, or even expectations, etc., the speed of change is so massive that many a times we are just gambling. And we can't be missing out, of course. We have to use those tools and we have to ensure that those signals are baked into our advertisement. But measurement is something that needs to kind of see a step change when it comes to us figuring out what is working and what is not.
I'll actually harp on what have already been highlighted across. It's of course the consumers who actually are changing the fastest, and everybody else needs to evolve around it. What just got mentioned across is the measurement space is actually playing a catch-up game right now, right? The consumer is driving the change. AI and technologies and creatives are actually following with it. But the measurement in itself, which is the challenge right now, because the traditional measurement, the surface levels measurements are not going to be sufficient enough to actually get the ROI out of it. And traditionally what Comscore, as a brand, what we have been doing has been measuring across deduplicated audience, across various mediums. And now we are also evolving into a state where we are able to measure AI platforms as well, known as of course, the ChatGPTs, the Perplexities, and the co-pilots of the world, which is now going to be helpful to brands like yourselves and agencies and publishers like yourselves to actually see those deduplicated numbers across not only digital mediums, but also the AI mediums.
Great. So I think we all agree that customer is central, rest everything is built around that. And of course, measurement is something that really needs to go up there. My next question is to you, Shilpi. In the fintech industry, I think the role of video advertising specifically is not just to drive an engagement. This is also to build in, that narrative of trust fairly quickly. How are you using data and AI, wherein you also maintain a line and not over-target, but at the same time are able to communicate what the fintech industry has to offer with respect to, of course, your organization?
Sure, thanks for that. Now, like I mentioned previously, when you're interacting with any fintech app, the fintech app basically knows where you're eating, where you're swiping your card, what phone bill, what network, FASTag, where are you traveling. It's pretty creepy, right? But how do you differentiate yourself by not, just being that, hey guys, you're all under surveillance. I know where you ate last night and you could have saved 200 rupees. I think there's a very thin line which we need to tread on to ensure that you're not really making the guy feel that you're under surveillance, but I am going to add value to your life, right? So that can actually, in our segment, is happening either through education, right? Which is again based on cohorts. Where are you? Are you a new customer? Are you new to UPI? Then the video content will be around educating you that, hey, okay, this is what UPI is, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you're supposed to set it up. If you're slightly evolved, I will be speaking to you about systematic investment plans. If you're slightly more evolved in the funnel, I will be speaking to you about mutual funds. Then there would be some sort of customization and personalization where I will say, okay, we've seen a particular trend that you pay your postpaid bill at this time, and then I maybe send you a notification saying that, hey, your bill is due in 3 days. Why don't you pay through, through my app, right? So what we need to build, and it's such a sensitive segment where we're dealing with money, and Indians, are very, very conservative with money, right? I think the one classic example which I always talk about is that we're the first country where any fintech app had a penny drop. Like, we typically send 1 rupee and say, hey, we got that money. I don't know of any country which does that, right? How would you imagine somebody sending a rupee and saying, hey, aapko wo 1 rupee mil gaya? Like, just imagine how finicky we are about money, right? So in this kind of segment, you have to be very, very careful. And how are you educating? How are you really building that trust? Through your video content creation, telling them how to do things, how to build trust, not just doing advertising or, storytelling, but real life examples with lifestyle, so things that what in this particular life stage would you need? Like I just mentioned, if it's a student, it's a college goer, you want to educate them about saving some money, about taking some personal loans. So which life stage and how do we target that? I think that's something which is very important. And like I said, that very thin line of ensuring that people feel that you're adding value and not spying on them, right? So I think that's where the fintechs really work very hard to ensure that, the next time you get a call that, hey, I know, you spent on this FASTag, you're traveling, why don't you take my FASTag? We don't have to do that, right? We have to be really adding value and not creeping people out.
I think that makes sense when you're acting more like a partner rather than somebody who's getting too intrusive in their customer journey. I think that's where the balance really lies. Yeah. My next question is to you, Ganapathy. In an industry which is food related, I think the consumer choices are fairly predetermined. Why? Because it's largely because of the families that they grew up in, the cultures and the traditions they've had, or even the lifestyle and the routines that they follow. How are you using data and AI, especially with respect to video marketing, to make your communication very effective, especially around consumer movements and occasions, while still retaining that flavor of warmth and familiarity that food brands are known for?
So, there's a bit of disagreement to what you have. While we are familiar with a certain set of spread of food, the eternal question every day playing out in every household is, aaj kya banega? Okay? And I am sure everybody empathizes in the audience as well as the panel with that question. Now, we are in an effort, honestly, if I spoke at an esoteric level, to solve for that question. Because you're familiar with the food, but you were still not convinced as to what is it that I want today. So can I help you make that decision better? If I'm able to do that, and today I have tech at my disposal and AI at my disposal to do that. It wasn't ever possible because the possibilities which you can do or which you can make and cook up at home today abound. It is not restricted to what you've culturally grown eating. You want to eat something which is cooked probably in the deepest parts of Russia, it is still available in India. You have access to that. You have recipes, somebody teaching you at a click of a button how to do it and how do you experience it. So it's like, it's not something which is inaccessible. It's accessible. Now the fact is, the task becomes harder for us to understand what is the available resource, what is the sort of palette spread, what is the level of experimentation, and what's the the nature of this food eating movement. Is it people coming home? Is it, to build comfort at home? Is it self-indulgence? Is it nutrition for family? What exactly is the driver to it? So I think, we try and solve for this matrix, which eventually leads to what you want to cook, and how does the consumer feel satisfied with every occasion of that nature. Now that's where communication built, be it understanding of all that information which a household does, to what can we surprise them with, and the level of creative which is built to kind of keep up with the warmth, to not look or sound industrial. It's not preachy, it's about indulging. Like somewhere we were discussing, about partnering. It's about just being together with you as a mirror image of you, participating in the process and enabling you to kind of live that process in your own way. That's where I think this tech for us starts to make tremendous amount of sense. And that's the path we've chosen for ourselves to work with as a brand. And, and we've been fairly successful at it because we can see consumers respond to us along these lines without being directive that this is the way you should do it. There are times when you probably do not have the entire laundry list of ingredients to make something as you would want. So there are moments when you kind of collaborate and build, and that's what this tech is all about. And I think that's where personalization at scale starts to come alive for us.
Great, great. I think you're solving one of the world's biggest problem, aaj khana kya banega. So if you're able to solve for that, I think that's brilliant. Pooja, my next question is to you. In an industry which is linked with home, everyday living, I think idea of video advertising is far more than just to nudge a purchase. It is also to drive in that aspirational factor. How are you using data, AI, and video marketing per se to communicate your side of the story while still maintaining that larger storytelling and aspirational living that the consumer is looking for?
Thank you for the question, Rekha. To be really honest, I think for us, video advertising, there are two parts to it. Okay, one part is we still stick with a large macro format of storytelling where we do lay out very clearly the kind of aspirational lifestyle that consumers are really looking for, right? In terms of the kind of sets we put up, the kind of artists you hire, the kind of stories you tell, etc., right? I think for us, this is really about bridging the gap between the aspiration that you've set out and where you are today, and how do you sort of travel that distance. And once you've set that aspiration, the rest of the video advertising job, and where AI and tech and data play a lot of role, is actually in helping you bridge that gap from where you are to where you really want to be. For example, I was just, I was thinking about it when Ganapathy was speaking about food and solving the problem of aaj kya banaye. And I realized that we use that very powerful question as a very important tech input. So we do a lot of kitchen appliances which are all AI enabled, right? Yeah, they're app controlled. I can actually track what do you make the most frequently, on which days of week, because India is about veg on some days and non-veg on some days also, right? What kind of meats you eat, what kind of vegetables you eat, does it vary by season, so on and so forth. I can actually map, and we actually do map all of that, of course, with a lot of consent from people who've already downloaded and subscribed to our application, etc. And then we use that information to actually nudge people towards taking that one next step toward upgrading their lifestyle. Right? A lot of time this happens via a very well curated, like you mentioned, network of partners. Because it's not necessary for me to always keep pushing my product, my device, my appliance. I don't want to indulge into purchase. I want to actually nurture a deep relationship which makes my consumer think about Philips every time they speak, every time they think home. So I have a well curated network of partners who are, think of us as mutually beneficial for each other. And we keep building these stories of each other's consumer databases to really then find the right moments to nudge, the right nudges to give, and the right incentives to really move that nudge. If I were to sort of summarize what we're trying to do, or the difference that's really come through this entire technological revolution, is the fact that earlier we were just telling stories. Now I think we are enabling decision one viewer at a time, and at that level. That's where this is.
I think what you're saying is absolutely resonating with me, because when we also do planning for a lot of our brands, we are not trying to disrupt the journey that they're already at. We are just trying to give them a nudge of solving an issue that they're already facing. That's why they're there in the first place. Brand comes in later. So I think if you're able to solve for that aspect, I think we'll be able to really do wonders with the way we do marketing. Vivek, this question is for you. We've spoken about it as well. In your opinion, while a lot of industry folks are fairly excited with the entire AI-led targeting and personalization, do you think, is it really working, A? Also, do you think marketers are equipped to kind of measure the business impact that this is able to drive? Or are we still reporting surface level metrics?
So we already discussed it in our initial comments. So yes, as of now, marketers are still focusing on surface level metrics. The industry definitely needs to evolve into measuring much more impactful variables. And having said so, when you look at from an AI perspective, let me just take a step back and just give an AI perspective how traditionally things have been actually moving. When you look at India as a geography, and from a measurement standpoint, what we're seeing is the audience shift, the behavior shift is happening at a very different scale right now. Now, out of the approximately 160 million odd AI users, if I have to talk about the top 4 or 5 AI platforms that are there, when you look at that, 40% of that user is coming from the Gen Z category, okay, which is the 18 to 24 kind of category audience, okay. Now, identifying this audience and placing your advertisement in front of this audience and getting an impact out of this audience has been a challenging aspect. Now, with a cross-platform measurement, that the goal that Comscore is actually envisioning right now, where we can actually do both mobile, AI, desktop, social media, and now connected TV as well. When we are able to do that and give you a deduplicated reach across this, then the measurement becomes much more relevant for marketeers as well, where they will be able to take it up to advertisers and create a media plan according to those numbers, which are much more relevant to showcase rather than the typical CTR numbers and VCR numbers that we have been discussing thus far.
Correct. I think also it really has to do justice to the fact that, you know, the traditional video advertising and AI-led video advertising, what has the shift been? Not just from a number standpoint, but also from a behavioral aspect, because I think that is something which will drive deeper conversations going forward.
Of course, the intent and engagement is much higher when it comes to AI, and how we measure that and what is the outcome that we are able to throw is going to be the real source of truth for marketers to plan their media plans.
Correct. Great. Kautilya, this question is for you. In the D2C and e-commerce space, that entire journey between discovery and kind of closure is fairly shorter. How do you see that AI and data-led video targeting, which was essentially largely an awareness tool to begin with, now that is changing into a tool which is driving consideration and also nudging users to purchase, and at times even doing customer retention. So how do you see that?
Actually, let me break it down in 2 parts, right? One, so when we think about video advertising, earlier what was it? As you said, traditional media, you will create one video, you will kind of blast that video, and you'll hope that part of your TG will be exposed to it, and some sort of brand metrics will move from there, right? What fundamentally, so 2 parts, right? Production of the video and then distribution of the video, right? Video assets. Production fundamentally changed and has changed dramatically in the last, whatever, year or so, right? I'll give you my own example. We shot one master film, and now we are kind of creating 500 different assets from that master film with different call to actions, different category, different USP, as well as different category, right? So there's like the flexibility that we've got in terms of production without really increasing any cost whatsoever, right? And here I'm talking about a film which you are shooting. right? Imagine the kind of scale that a tier 2 brand or tier 3 brand sitting out of, let's say, Unnao, right, in UP. The kind of capabilities that they get is actually on par with what a large brand is getting, right? So that distance has kind of really compressed in terms of quality of output, right? So essentially production way more easier without really any differentiation in terms of cost, etc. Now comes the distribution. Now, it fundamentally comes down to, and I know there's a lot of discussion about this first-party data, etc. Right? But the enablement that you get from that first-party data, it's actually very similar to, I don't know, most of you would have ordered from some D2C brands in the past few months, and there are this few niche brands who have this habit of putting a personalized card in the package when it arrives, right? Hey, Kautilya, thank you from ordering from ABC. Look forward to kind of continued whatever, right? I mean, and it, at least for me, I always feel good when I see that card, right? I'll always read it because it just looks like they have put an effort, right? When they're packaging and sending it, they have put an effort. In this world, video is evolving into that personalized note, right? Because you are supposed to know what is it that what stage in the funnel the user is. For example, in my case, right, if someone has signed up and not done the first shipment, let's say, right, I will show them testimonial videos. I'll show them how-to videos. If someone has done the shipment, I'll show them the next best product to be used from Shiprocket. If someone has not signed up, then I'll essentially focus on awareness and what are the kind of services that we give, right? Basis category, basis whatever it is that they're doing, right? So distribution, basis first-party data, and understanding where your users are in the funnel. And then it's just become one of those things that I was calling out in my first part as well. It shouldn't feel like advertising. It should feel like conversation. And it's happening already. So in fact, video advertising, video is actually now compressed. The entire funnel from discovery to consideration to purchase intent to actual purchase is all compressed together. It's not really a funnel anymore. And that's the superpower that we're kind of getting through.
Yeah, I think conversational video advertising is something which is really working. That brings me to the end of the panel, but before that, I will ask one common question to all of you, which is, if you were to leave the marketers with one priority which they should pick for future of advertising, which one would it be, and what is it that you would want them to focus upon? We'll start with you, Vivek.
Well, I think it'll go back to the first point that you actually started with, chase the consumer, okay? Chase the consumer in a way that they are their ads are actually relevant. It's not intrusive in nature, and keeping it impactful. That's what needs to be done.
Pick up one use case that you do on a daily basis. It could be writing brief, it could be creating content, it could be planning media for that content, or it could be measurement. Pick up one and just commit to yourself that in the next 7 days, the only thing that you will do is unlock that part of your work through AI. You have to start today, and you have to kind of start on the journey. Unless and until you do it on your own, unless and until you kind of start experiencing, reading about it, listening to others doesn't really matter. You have to start doing it on your own. And any aspect of your everyday life, anything that you pick up, you will be able to see a significant, disproportionate unlock using the tools that you have right now.
I think the one thing that I would say, and would leave the marketers with, is when we have access to so much of data, AI, tools, machine learning, this and that, what the basic thing that we shouldn't really lose track of is what does the consumer want. In this, like I mentioned, in this whole pool of cohorts and lookalikes, and this is what the consumer wants, and this is what he wants at every life stage. I think if we pick one thing that as a brand we want to solve for, I think that will solve for everything. Then you can use all the other tools, but I think at the core is going to be, how is it that you will solve for that one thing? Why should somebody come back to you? I think if you solve that, that's where you create brand love, and then all the content can flow into his life. But I think that's the core.
Read my mind, Shilpi. I was about to say that. Actually, what I'm going to now say is going to probably ruffle a lot of feathers, but when I look at young marketers now, a lot of them, we keep interacting with them, right? I think all of this jargonization at some level of marketing and technology and terminologies, etc., has just confused everybody quite a lot. And what people end up losing sight of is the objective, right? तो आप typically briefs देखोगे जिसमें लिखा होगा कि हमें awareness भी बढ़ानी है, consideration भी बढ़ाना है, preference भी बढ़ाना है और business भी बढ़ाना है. इसका कोई मतलब नहीं होता है. एक चीज़ से सब कुछ नहीं हो सकता ना. So I think my one very raw piece of advice to anybody new or old in marketing is first get clarity of your objective and be rock solid and don't waver from that objective. Sometimes and all the time, new technological tools, people, agencies will try and come and pull you in different directions. If you get pulled, you're getting nowhere. इधर खिंचोगे, यहीं रह जाओगे. But if you have determined an end goal for yourself, then keep moving. Keep that one thing in focus. Don't lose sight of objective. And I think everything else will find a way of enabling you to get to your objective. But that, I think, is supremely important.
Tough one to go in the last, no? So all of this and, all of this and be brave to stick to all of this. Because your determination on what you see clarity is not going to happen from outside. That is driven by you. Your belief in your consumer. If you be the voice of the consumer within your organizations, you deserve the right to be called a marketer. That's a fundamental bit. So please be brave with it and don't be so serious about it. Add a little bit of fun because it's still an art. It's not the entire science of it. So don't get bogged down with so much of data and the science of it. So have fun and I think it will unlock for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks to all the panelists and the audience for listening in. Thank you.